Do you ever just want to play a game with a decent story but not have to spend $60 on a AAA title? Well, you're in luck, because hidden within Steam's never-ending catalog of games are a few hidden gems with some good stories, and the best part is that all of these games on this list are completely free. Because these games are free, you won't be getting AAA game quality per se, and many of these can be beaten in about an hour or two maybe, but regardless, there are some really good stories and experiences here. Let's get into it. Here are the top 10 best free story games that you can play right now on Steam. Starting out this list strong is The Savior from Above. It's a super charming side-scrolling platforming game with some unique puzzles, a really cool atmosphere, and a pretty intriguing narrative. The thing I like most about this game is the fact that it reminds me a lot of Little Nightmares, which is one of my favorite series of all time. This game has a bit of a different vibe to it though, more science fiction and space focused, and less creepy and scary. The story follows a little astronaut who crash landed on an alien planet. Everything seems pretty straightforward at first, but of course there's more to uncover as you get further into the game. It's a pretty short game and it only takes about 15 to 30 minutes to beat, but it's definitely a cool little game that we highly recommend.
It's Russian roulette and utterly unfair. The cards had been dealt. Any player would have.
Next up is definitely a more relaxed and slow-paced game, if you can even call it that. It's more of a visual novel. Even though it's pretty uneventful gameplay-wise, the story here is definitely worth it. The game follows the story of Kelsey and Marie, two friends/classmates. You play as Kelsey, remembering her past and thinking back, trying to figure out what happened to Marie. The music, atmosphere, and overall feel that the game emits are very relaxing. It's one of those games that I can imagine sitting down with a cup of coffee just experiencing. It's got a good flow and it's pretty short and sweet. The art style is also really unique. And as for the story, it's kind of grounded. I mean, it plays with a lot of themes that you may actually relate to. And the game isn't something you'll get hours and hours of gameplay out of, but it is very much worth playing.
Body. Only one shot was heard. No assailant has been identified. Not much more to go on.
Summerland is one of the more intriguing stories on this list, and something really cool about this game is that it was developed by a high school student, so that just makes it all the more impressive. Now, the game can be a bit janky and laggy, but luckily the star of this game isn't the gameplay but the story. Basically, you play as a detective who relives his memories. The game touches on themes of mortality and what comes after death. Pretty cool stuff, and again, it's so impressive that all this narrative came from a high school student. As for the runtime, the game takes about an hour to beat, maybe longer if you explore more. The gameplay itself is pretty standard. It's a first-person story game that has some interactive elements to it, but nothing special. Definitely the highlight of the game, again, is the story, and surprisingly, the voice acting is really good too. It's a unique game with a lot of interesting themes intertwined throughout the story. The Unluckiest Man is a game that I feel could have actually cost some money if it were a bit longer. It's a decently polished game, but it's definitely on the shorter side of things. Like an hour long short, or maybe even less than that. I don't want to get too much into the story because it's pretty weird, and I think it's best to experience it for yourself, but basically, it follows a man named Dragomir after his wife just died. The overall theme is pretty Halloweenish, so it's a great game to play in October, and something else that's really cool is you get to explore the small town and talk with the NPCs. Oh, and it's also not in English, but you can put subtitles on. So not ideal, but it didn't bother me all that much. It's got a lot of polish for a free game, and the story is good too. So I think this game is worth considering. Burning Daylight reminds me a lot of Inside. It's got that dark and morbid storytelling through the environment around you, and is kind of a borderline walking simulator, but it works really well here, and I like the game a lot. There isn't a lot of narrative per se that is just handed to you in the game. It's more artistic in the way it describes the story. The setting is a dystopian world, and your goal is to explore this world in the hopes of finding out where you came from. I don't know. I'm really a sucker for these types of games, so I'm really into this one. I love Inside, Little Nightmares, and all those types of games, and Burning Daylight definitely feels inspired by those types of games. I also even got a little bit of a Stray vibe from it too. The quality and storytelling are honestly at a level where I would comfortably pay money for this. It could honestly be up there with Inside and similar games, if only it were longer. It's a great morbid story and a good game to have in your library.
My grandfather's grandfather clock. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a...
Similar to some of the other games on this list, What Never Was is a short story-driven game that involves a pretty reserved gameplay style, mostly walking around, picking up things, and solving some puzzles. I think the puzzles are definitely a big focus point aside from the story. They aren't difficult, but have just enough challenge to make them enjoyable. The game is also short and should take you about an hour to beat. The story follows Sarah as she explores her grandfather's attic, which seems straightforward, but eventually things get a bit more interesting. I actually really enjoyed the story, and you can really see the developer's passion for the project. Really solid game and a good short story that is worth playing. Probably one of the most unique games on this list is Escape the Game. It's a 2D platforming game that consistently breaks the fourth wall, has a lot of funny moments, and surprisingly has a great short story that pairs well with the gameplay. It's very charming, which is how I would summarize it. The gameplay feels really good, the overall quality just feels premium. The story is told through dialogue bubbles, so if that bothers you, I guess that's something to consider. I personally didn't mind it all that much, and I thought it fit the game very well. The title pretty much summarizes the narrative of the game. You play as Kevin in his journey to escape the game. It's fun, unique, and very, very much worth checking out.
Tomorrow. So we need to run through this last test build.
Do I have a choice?
Okay, you are not hearing me.
Try Again is a platformer game that not only has a unique premise, but also great gameplay. I really like this game. It reminds me a lot of Inside and kind of similar games to that. To summarize, you play as Benny, a test character who is stuck in an unfinished game, and you need to escape the game developer. It's definitely a story that I've never seen before. Basically, you were navigating an unfinished game and racing against the time crunch that the publishers are putting on the dev. The game is just awesome. I mean, I like this game so much. I only wish it were longer. Like, if the game was honestly a full 4 to 8 hour game, I would happily pay like $30 for it. I mean, it's free, so the game only takes about an hour to beat. It's unique, fun, and a really good story. Try Again is definitely worth playing.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have.
Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft is a game that has such a high level of polish and such a good and interesting story that if you plan on playing just one of the games from this list, this has got to be one of them. The game is so good. It's basically like watching a short movie. It's creepy and very, very Lovecraftian. And the game actually looks good too. I'm a huge fan of anything Lovecraft, so I may be a bit biased. The gameplay is pretty vanilla, but the story and the vibe really carry the game. I mean, it's also sitting with an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, so I'm not the only one who thinks the game is great. I really don't want to spoil too much or go too deep into what you should expect. Just get the game and play it. We highly recommend it.
I see it, but I don't believe it. I didn't even have to call you. What is going on here?
The food smells good.
The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit is an excellent end to this list. It follows a story that revolves around Chris, a 9-year-old boy who has a big imagination and a superhero alter ego. The game has heavy ties to Life is Strange 2, but it can definitely be played alone. I mean, I've never played Life is Strange 2 or even the first game, and I still enjoyed this. Just for those who have played or are planning to play Life is Strange series, this game fits into that universe. It's got the quality of a paid game, good mechanics, amazing voice acting, and a great story. I mean, the story in particular is heartwarming, but it's also pretty tragic and grounded, and it has a lot of emotional tones and themes. It's a good story. I mean, what can you expect from the Don't Nod devs? The game also offers more content than probably any other game on this list. You'll get a decent 2 to 4 hours of gameplay here. There's not much else to say. The game is honestly it's worth playing and definitely deserves a spot on this list. Alright, well, that's going to wrap it up for this list. Obviously, there will be games that we miss, so if there are any free story games that you know of, please leave them down in the comments below. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.